It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, March 16th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that has some thoughts about the Flyers front office and what they could do to turn things around a little bit.
I may have a thought or two.
Yeah, we're going to get into that, the GM meetings, and we're going to do a prospect profile on college player Jaxon Nelson, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with the brilliant Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Flyers. That is where we post about our episodes and Flyers news. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Locked On Flyers is free and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. So subscribe. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Plus, we're over on YouTube. So if you want to see our facial expressions as we wax poetic about the Flyers, subscribe over there. Russ, we had a little bit of news from the GM meetings. Most importantly, I think for us, draft lottery is May 8th. So
That's a
mark your
biggie.
calendars. Yeah.
Be prepared to be bored, but it's always, what you're getting when you get into it. And I'm going to be snarky tweeting about, what I see, but in the end, I still watch it, of course.
Yeah, I'm still hoping for, instead of having the GMs or whatever, just have the mascots like
Yeah, they're never going to do it,
representatives
but
of
I'm
the
in
team.
favor of it. I like it.
Yeah, got to make it interesting. Um, as far as the other GM meeting news, not a ton of stuff coming out of it. No playoff format changes, no expansion for now. They discussed some minor rule tweaks, but nothing significant, except for maybe the thought of expanding overtime to 7 minutes.
Yeah, I'm good with the overtime for 7 minutes. I can tell you that I don't like more coaches' challenges for more things like the over the glass rule. Like, look, I had a big discussion on Sirius about this, and I was in the minority. But after talking to a guy who referees, when you're watching the playoffs, there's at least 3 or 4 plays of that a game when guys start getting gassed. And if they don't get it right, they don't get it right. But if you keep stopping and looking, and especially if they're in the corner where it's near the netting, you're going to make a game 10 minutes longer. You will. And I don't have any time for that. It's going to ruin the pace of the game. So I hope that they don't add any more rules to the challenge list because, again, even goaltender interference, at this point, we're all just going to argue about it anyhow. So just keep it at a minimum and let's just keep the game moving.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, with puck over glass, each rink is slightly different in terms of where the glass and the stanchion things are. And so the bounces are weird. Like, let's just not review it and move on. And I agree with you wholeheartedly there. There was also some, minor talk about the Senators sale, which has now had the first round of bids come in. So we'll see where all of that goes.
Okay, so if I'm with FanDuel, I'm making Ryan Reynolds Group the favorite regardless, no matter what. No matter what anybody says, no matter what the odds are, I just have a feeling.
Yeah, well, supposedly there's one offer in that's higher than all the others, and I don't know if it's the one he's a part of, but we'll see.
It may not be about what's higher, though, because apparently Reynolds Group has a different idea of where the arena might be, not LeBreton Flats. So I looked it up, too, and I remember I never got to a game, but the Ottawa Lynx used to play baseball in Ottawa, and that area still exists. And maybe they're going to knock that down and try and do a rink there. That wouldn't be a bad idea. It's, people know about it. So who knows? Maybe that's their idea.
All right. So turning our attention to the Flyers front office, I want to start and get a lay of the land of where we are right now in terms of the structure And we know how it's been working, right? So we've had a combination president GM. We know now that the plan is to separate those two roles, which I think is a really good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we obviously recently had the addition of Daniel Hilferty as the CEO of Comcast Spectacor, which may or may not indicate Dave Scott retiring. So that's kind of what we know now in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the changes.
Yeah, we're caught up with that. Absolutely.
So looking at the hockey ops department for the Flyers, a lot of people in it. It's like you think of it as a small group, but there's actually a lot more people in it than you think.
Oh yeah.
Looking at the list, but really, you have Brent Flair as an assistant general manager. You also have Barry Hanrahan, who's another VP, assistant
Mm-hmm.
general manager, but
He's
he's
the
not really.
capologist, though.
Right, right. So he is not involved in the specific hockey decisions other
No.
than looking at the finances of
Right.
everything. So those are kind of like your two main arms right now. And then I have what you call the old timers club, right? Which is senior advisors or alumni advisor. And so that's Paul Holmgren, Bobby Clark, Bill Barber, and then the non-flyer Dean Lombardi, right?
Well, he technically is a Flyer. He just wasn't a player, but he was
Right.
in the organization once.
That is true. That is true. I'm just saying he wasn't a
A
player
player.
for the
And just to be
team.
fair on that, that has not been jettisoned. So there's nobody's been cleaned out yet. Nobody's not showing up to games.
So yeah, that's kind of your old timers club there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of dig into player personnel, right? So you have Alan McCauley, who's the director, and then you
Mm-hmm.
have Dave Brown, who's the head pro scout, with
Mm-hmm.
4 pro scouts reporting to him. Then you have 3 college scouts that include Kyle Shiro, little Nepo
Mm-hmm.
baby action in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have 7 North American amateur scouts. Joachim Grunberg is head of European scouting, and there's 3 European scouts plus half of Sammy Kapanen, who is also head of player development in Europe. That's
Mm-hmm.
the other half of his role. Um, Player development, you have Mike O'Connell, and then you have the what I call the middle-aged timers group
Mm-hmm.
of ex-Flyers in player development. Although Shel Samuelson, I guess, is an old timer in the grand scheme of things. But
He is.
Shel Samuelson, and then more recent Flyers, Nick Schultz, Chris Stewart, and Sam Moran are amongst the people in player development. So the picture we get here is a lot of people, as we know, who were players on the team or have an association with the team. And when you look at it all on paper like this or on a screen or whatever, that just it becomes a lot more problematic, I think, when you just see the sheer volume of that, right?
Right, right. And just so you understand and people out there understand, a lot of times these scouting contracts and everything are up in July. Many times they're 1 year, sometimes they're 2 years. So we don't know which contracts are up, but I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
there are some that are up. So that's something to mention. As an example, I'd have to relook at the European because Samu Tuamala couldn't cut it in Liga this year. 14 games, didn't get a point, and now in Mestis he's ripping it up. But Mestis is a lower league, and so at
It's
20,
so much lower.
yeah, at 20 he's behind. Now he's now behind in his development because of everything that's gone on the last couple of years and the fact that he hasn't made it to North America yet to stay. So that I have to relook at that whole situation. That all needs to get looked at because this is a second round pick that they can't afford to have just go by the wayside. So that's something that should get reviewed.
Yeah, there's all of this needs to get reviewed. I just think looking at what they have now, as far as the personnel in this hockey ops or this part of the hockey ops group, right? We haven't talked about analytics yet, but
Right.
looking at this part of hockey ops, like we have to ask, do they have enough people? Do they have the right people? Are they getting enough of a variety of types of opinions? It's
I,
like, are you looking at former players? Are you looking at people who scout for their careers? Are you looking at people who have more familiarity in certain geographic areas? And is this distributed properly?
well, I mean, just easy looking and knowing how things are with player development. Uh, there's a real lack of experience. There's some experience there, but not enough. And just having ex players in there doesn't mean you're going to have good development. So that's something like, even someone like Sam Moran, like player development, why is he doing that? If you want to have him be a scout for you, fine. But player development, you really need guys that are skilled in training and doing other things. Just being an ex player doesn't check off all the boxes for that. It doesn't.
No, I think, given his situation, that was something he wanted to go into, and the organization is encouraging him in that field. And so, it seems like from what we've seen that he's getting the right mentoring and he's not, taking on a significant role. He's in sort of the learning process, but the organization is trying to do him a solid because of the injury.
Right, but you know what? They can't do anybody solids anymore. That's my point.
Yeah.
They're at the
Yeah.
point where they're in crisis and need to get things on track. They're losing money, with not having enough fans in the stands. I'm sure they're making money, but you get what I'm saying. They're losing opportunities. You can't do any solids anymore. You really have to look at these things and say, okay, is this our best course of action? Like someone like Shell's been around a long time. We've seen results from the defenseman, so that I
Right.
get. But there's other guys, Nick Schultz. I haven't seen enough results, so they need to really look at all of that. And just being an ex player doesn't make you qualified for it.
No, and, there's a lot of potential changes that could be made. We have some ideas for that, and we're gonna talk about those coming up next.
The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to points, scorers, and threes drained. Again, maybe bet on Joel Embiid to win the MVP. That seems pretty good to me. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com/locked on. That's fanduel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Okay, so looking at what's happening with the front office right now, including the coaching staff, and analytics, which again is a whole other group of people that aren't technically in hockey ops. They're a separate department of the organization. I have several thoughts. My first thought is something we have brought up on the show before in the coaching staff, and starting with the coaching staff. Obviously, John Tortorella is going nowhere, and
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, I think he's made some improvements on the team, and he understands what he's facing right now.
Yeah.
But we have talked about Rocky Thompson and the power play, and I really think we need to get a true power play specialist in here. Rocky Thompson has not been able to improve things at all this season.
No, I agree. The power play is an abomination, and they really need to start from scratch for the entire organization. Like it's bad in Lehigh now again too. So whoever you get can pass on the message throughout the organization, and that would be a help for everybody.
And along those lines, I think there's some specialty coaches that can be brought in that I think would be helpful. So, number one, I would add like a full time skating coach for the organization.
Me too. I
And
mean, you saw it.
yeah.
I tweeted about it against Vegas. They used to have a Russian guy. I forget his name. He was like unofficial though. They need an
Mhm.
official, and they need
Yeah.
and it's not just for a couple of guys that we need work like Tyson Forster. It's for everybody. Everybody needs to get better because when they're facing fast teams, it is so noticeable for almost everybody on the ice.
Right, and this person can split their time between the Flyers and Phantoms. Like, I
Yes.
have no problem with
Yeah.
that. It's not that far apart. Spending a couple days a week with the guys up in Allentown and
Hmm.
then, a couple days a week in Voorhees or depending on the travel schedules and all that. But I think a full-time dedicated skating coach would go a long way toward helping mitigate at least especially in the short term, getting, some of these guys faster and helping the team be a little bit more competitive and then bringing in the prospects at a higher level, right? Having already
Right.
had more extensive skating coaching.
Hmm.
So that's where I'm at with that. And then I think we really need, to your point that we were just talking about in player development, we really need somebody from the outside with an
Hmm.
outside perspective that has come from success. And they can be an ex player, but I want them to have player development experience with proven success in terms of, maybe taking a lot of prospects that were maybe drafted lower and you see how they've flourished or they've reached their ceiling or exceeded their ceiling, and somebody that just doesn't have any experience with the Flyers whatsoever. I think that would go a long way.
It would, and honestly, there are places out there, companies out there, people out there that do multi-sport. It doesn't have to be just a hockey only person. This could be someone that's worked with hockey players, baseball players, whatever, because some of it's mental, some of it is on the ice, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of different things that could be worked on here, and you don't have to limit it to just a hockey person.
Yep. I think that's absolutely the case. Then I have an interesting idea for one Eric Lindros, whose name has gone around in terms of taking on a role with the team. And having just gone through all of this about how we need non-Flyers voices in the room, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here. But I do think that there's value to Eric Lindros in the organization. For the main reason that he was kind of shunned by the organization for a while
Right.
and there had to be a reconciliation to some degree. And so to me, it feels like he's coming at, interest in being involved in the organization with a healthy dose of skepticism first off. And because he knows what he's been through with the team
Correct.
before. And so he has this weird combination of being an insider and an outsider at the same time. And so I feel like his perspective is a valuable one because he is able to step away from the machine of the Flyers of the 80s and 90s, I think, in a way that maybe some other ex Flyers can't. And I think, given his history, I would create a new position in player development with a focus on health and rehab and mental health and assign that to him. And so for every player that's going through injuries or rehab or has mental health issues, he's there to support them and help them in whatever they're doing, helping connect with medical treatment that they need, and then also increasing the transparency of the organization, right? So he's the one that what we know without, you know, um, invalidating somebody's privacy, as much as you would do, just reporting on progress and issues that come up and just adding a little extra layer of transparency, which has been sorely lacking from the Flyers. And I think having Eric Lindros as the mouthpiece for that would go a long way.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it, but you were doing great until you mentioned transparency, and this organization clearly doesn't want to be very
Well, we're
transparent.
we're talking changes though, right? So this is
Yeah,
something that has to change, and I'm not
yeah,
talking realism here. I'm
I know.
talking this is what should happen,
I,
and
I I
that's why I
agree
would
that it
create this
should happen.
position.
I don't foresee it happening though. I'm jaded when it comes to that. I just don't think they want that. But I agree with your idea. I do.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's just an idea. I don't think this is a position that um, has existed before
No.
in the NHL or for any sports team, to
Well,
my knowledge. Well, maybe a little bit,
I think a
but
little bit. I think there is a little bit, um, but yeah, I like it, and I think it's very forward thinking and progressive.
yeah, and I think Eric Lindros is the
He would be
perfect
a good guy for that, and because he
guy for
also
that.
worked with the PA, so he also
Hmm.
understands all that, the inner workings of
Exactly.
that.
Exactly, and that's how he can bridge the gap between the PA and the team and the player and advocate for the players within the organization behind the scenes in the way that the PA should, but really have a more dedicated person in house, but then also, again, provide updates. So that is my hope, wish, and dream for Eric Lindros. We'll see if it happens or not. Well, it
Yeah.
won't, but that is my hope, wish, and dream.
And as far as your next note about expanding analytics, I'm only
Mhm.
willing to expand it if they're getting true data scientists and they have specific roles, because you don't have to get somebody who knows how to work hockey data. You don't, because data is data. It doesn't have to be a hockey person. Sometimes it's better if you don't have hockey people doing it. So this way it's just true information. But again, everybody has to have a specific role. Just expanding it's not enough for me. I don't care to expand it. I care to make it more specialized. And then if I need somebody else, I'll hire that. But right now, I feel like if you're asking me how much has analytics played into a lot of these decisions, I'm going to tell you it's less than 5%.
And that's where I was going with it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you expand the group, but have it more specific in their function and figure out a way to more effectively, again, for transparency, communicate how the analytics team is integrated with the organization. And you don't have to reveal any magic formulas
No.
or player evaluation tools or anything like that. You can say, we have all these people, they have these specific different roles that, they're working on in terms of what focus they have and how we synthesize all that data into effective tools for, Brent Flair or who's ever in that job to use in evaluating players.
Yeah, I would like to see some evidence that more of analytics is going on in decision making, especially with the draft. There's
Right.
some things you could do with draft predicting and other things. I'm not sure that it's really going on right now. That would be good because, again, in this draft, as an example, let's say they get no other picks. You've got the first round, and then you're waiting until the third round. Maybe you're going to look at trying to trade into the second round. Maybe you're going to look at 5 years of data to figure out what it's going to take for me to trade into the middle of the second round. What picks? Give me an idea of what the marketplace is for that. And then if you want to boost it a little, saying it's going to be a little harder this year, give me an idea. So you could give that to Briere and say, hey, if you want to get that second round pick, it's likely going to take this. And that's more of a tool than just kind of guessing. This is like 5 years of historical data at the draft. Here you go.
Right.
They need things like that. Those are the kinds of tools that if a GM has at his disposal, can make some really good decisions.
Yeah. Well, we're going to dig more into that as the rest of the season progresses and should any announcements come out. But those are our initial thoughts on the front office and some things they could do to improve. We are going to switch gears and talk about a really interesting prospect with some potential in a graduating college senior coming up next. Russ, you wanted to talk about Jaxon Nelson, who is a senior at the University of Minnesota, graduating this year. Now, we don't have Chuck Fletcher around anymore with the Minnesota
No.
connection there, but it's a good hockey program, so it shouldn't be discounted just for that reason. And Jaxon is an undrafted senior who will be available as a free agent. He wears an A on his jersey, so part of the team leadership. 22 points in 35 games this year. Has been a line mate of Flyers prospect Bryce Brodzinski. So a little familiarity there in terms of watching his play if you're following along with Bryce. And he's a big kid.
He is. He's a big guy, 6'4", 220. He's on a really great power play unit with guys like Jimmy Snuggerud, as an example, Logan Cooley. So you look at that and you say, why go after this guy? Well, he plays the bumper on the power play. He's got size. He has hands. Sounds like something John Tortorella might be interested in. He skates pretty well. He's a good two-way player. He's not going to be a huge scorer, but if you put him on a good power play and things are happening and there's pucks being shot to the net, he's going to deflect some in, and he's going to cause screens and problems for the goalie. It's not just like again, we've seen Tortorella put guys in that area. Just put Ristolainen in there. That how long did that last? Not very long.
Like
You
2
can't just
games.
do that. There are guys that are skilled at it, and this is a guy that's skilled at it. He's also a center, so you could, have a good fourth line center that could do all these things. He penalty kills. John Tortorella was asking for a penalty killer. Might want to use this guy down the road. So he would check off a lot of potential boxes for them. Why not? You've got the free contracts. You need talent. Throw him in Lehigh. See what you got.
Yeah, the thing that interests me specifically about him, he's got a strong two-way game, so he's really strong defensively and at faceoffs. He
Mm-hmm.
started out really as a defensive forward, like that was
Mm-hmm.
his specialty. And if you read up on, what the coaches there have been saying about him, is that he has improved his offensive game steadily
Yes,
over
every
his
year.
4 years at Minnesota. And the 22 points he got in this season are the most he's had as in college. And so to really see that he's learning to contribute offensively when that was not really the thing that brought him into the University of Minnesota, which is a top program, the fact that they were willing to take on a guy like him who wasn't a big scorer, but could play an important role, and then really work with him to develop other aspects of his game, that shows to me that he's coachable and teachable, which is something that John Tortorella really emphasizes.
Start making sure you got a scout at every last Minnesota game that's left this year. Make sure you're there when they get eliminated. Make sure, like you got to really go after it and say, there's opportunity here with this team, kid. So that's what you have to do. You have to be aggressive. And I would like to see them be aggressive for a player like this. We'll see, because there's going to be competition.
Oh, I'm sure there will be, based on everything that people have to say about him, and especially for a guy that wasn't drafted and has a lot to prove. I
Yes.
think that's a huge factor there, that he's gonna come in wherever he signs and really put everything into an
Oh, yeah.
opportunity that comes across, and that's why I like some of these guys. I mean, it is hit or miss,
Yeah,
right? Where
absolutely.
sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, but I think, taking a gander on a 1-year ELC on a guy like this, like, it's really low risk,
It
and
is.
I think given this guy's skills and the fact that he's already older and more mature and he's big and can
Mm-hmm.
handle himself, I think
Mm-hmm.
just that's such a good option for the Flyers right now. And I think there's a certain appeal with the Flyers in terms of, yes, this organization is rebuilding, but there's a reset here. And it's not going to be, just as we were talking about, in theory, things are not going to be done the same way. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think, there's something to be said for being part of building something new.
Right. And, if you're going to pass on O'Brien like they think they're going to, they still need more centers in this organization. They do.
Yep. They really do, and, yeah, this is a very interesting option for me, for the Flyers, and I certainly hope they do what you said and, really, start paying attention a
Step
lot
it
and
up.
talking to and show up
Yep.
and really see, what he can do in person, because I think he's pretty impressive in his complete game.
Yeah, he is. There's no question. And he's going to be one of the big guys, one of the big fish to get. And, if you could tell him that, he could burn that first year ELC, you sign him to maybe to a 2-year ELC, let him burn the first year, tell him there's opportunity. He could play a little with the Flyers this year to get his feet wet, see what
Mhm.
happens next year. If he goes in Lehigh, starts out there, fine. If not, fine. But yeah, that's how you're going to get a player like this. It's the only way.
Exactly. Alright, well, another guy to add to our list for our draft and prospect information, and we will continue to keep an eye on what he decides to do. I just want to give a quick note before we sign off for the episode about Carson Briere. We know
Mhm.
he has been in the news a bit for not so good reasons. There was video that went around showing him knocking a wheelchair down a set of stairs, an empty wheelchair down a set of stairs on social media. And, we were hesitant to say anything until there was a specific statement, and there is one now. So, obviously it's separate from the Flyers, but it does affect Danny Brier's work. First week on the job, and he has to talk about
And he has to deal
his
with that.
his
There's a
son.
perception. There's a perception
Yeah,
thing too. Like, like, hey, wow, okay. It's not Danny's fault, but okay, like, it's not great.
yeah. So Carson says, "I'm deeply sorry for my behavior on Saturday. There's no excuse for my actions, and I will do whatever I can to make up for this serious lack of judgment." And Danny basically said, "Yeah, he messed up. It's not what our family believes in, and he accepts responsibility. And take that however you want to. I'm not going to tell anybody how to feel about it. Especially having friends in the disabled community who, wheelchair is an extension of your body. And so when you damage a wheelchair, it's like you're breaking somebody's leg. And I certainly hope whatever happens with the investigation at Mercyhurst, there is some restitution made for that person.
Mm-hmm.
All right, with that, we will wrap up today's show with some better news than that. And the Howe Foundation made a significant donation of $50,000 to Snyder Hockey. That, of course, Mark Howe, Flyers alum, on behalf of Gordie Howe's foundation.
And Marty was there the other night too. It was
Yeah,
nice to see Marty.
yeah, it's a big family foundation. And, I'm certainly somebody that talks about Snyder Hockey a lot and all the good work that they do. So it's good to see some more support for them.
Yeah, it's great. They were out there. They were by the drum. They had kids with them banging the drum. It was fun.
Oh yeah, always love it when the Snyder Hockey kids get to do that.
Yep.
All right, we will be back again tomorrow. We are going to talk about the weekend matchups coming up. We have a game on Friday against the Sabres and a game on Saturday against Carolina, who we just saw, but they're down
It's a little
Svechnikov.
different now. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So send in any questions you have via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. Now make your next listen Game to Game NHL. It's every moment, every top performance, and every result. Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. It's on the Locked On NHL feed wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day.